Hey, welcome back Silver Bull fans, welcome back to Silver Bull channel. Well, today Australia got its lowest inflation figure for 13 years, getting towards 1%. Of course, Julia Gillard and Wayne Swan are jumping up and down saying how wonderful they are as economic managers. And normally I'd be happy that inflation is low because, as I've said in other videos, inflation is a stealthy tax. It's a secret tax. It slowly erodes your money by each year your money being worth less and less. And even if you sit your money in the bank, by the time you pay taxes, you're barely keeping pace with inflation. This constant eating away at your money. Hence why I'm a fan of silver and gold as a store of wealth. But what these inflation numbers don't, really show, they don't show an economy that's really been managed well. If you look beyond the hype, you'll find there's been a fall in the price of petrol somewhat. That may be because we're not in America's winter, and the US uses a lot of oil for heating during winter. So demand's down a bit, which gives us a breather, and that takes the pressure off a lot of inflation. But inflation on food goods, vegetables and fruit, things like that, has gone up 5%. So you get this two-paced economy. Goods like TVs, shit from overseas, due to our high dollar is less and less, pulling down the inflation rate. But most of these things are one-time purchases. You tend to buy a car, maybe once every 5-10 years. You buy a big screen TV, maybe once every 5 years. But fruit and veggies you buy each week, and any Australian knows as they go to the supermarket they're paying more and more and more for their food, for their necessities, and that's where the real inflation is occurring. This other deflation that we are seeing is merely the rest of the economy going down the toilet. And the Labor government is so stupid, they wave the flag thinking about how wonderful they are to keep inflation so low, not realising this CPI figure, which is half cooked anyhow, is showing the result of collapses, in the housing market. Housing market is backed off somewhat. What we are seeing, perhaps, despite the government getting into ever-increasing amount of debts, claiming they're going to have a surplus budget, which they're probably not, and so hence they're borrowing money every day. Normally that would increase interest rates. But in this sort of environment, the collapse of the debt, i.e. people bankrupting, is at a greater pace than the government's taking up creating new debt. If you understand how a fiat reserve currency works, or a fiat currency, you've got to keep the bubble growing. The moment the bubble starts collapsing on itself, you're going to have problems. You're going to have what Japan had, which is a deflationary spiral. And Australia, I think, is in danger of this because we have an incompetent government that doesn't realise this is a risk. And we're at risk of a deflationary spiral. Which, if you know that's what's occurring, if you're smart with your money, there's ways you can benefit from a deflationary spiral. But for the average person, all they're going to realise is they're going to, instead of getting pay increases this year, they're going to get pay cuts. Because most of us have grown up in a world with inflation. We're used to inflation. Most people don't realise this constant theft of their money. But they're not used to deflation, and what happens is it becomes a spiral because people then decide putting off purchases because they figure, well, next week it'll be even cheaper and even cheaper. And the problem you have, of course, is especially for retailers, and it's the retailers who feel it, they cut their margins, until they can't cut them anymore. And they've ended up paying, let's say they paid $10 for an item, and now the market has deflated, and they're trying to sell it at $8. So of course they're going to make a $2 loss. Now no company can do that, so they're going to either go bankrupt, sack workers, cut costs, you name it, all that sort of things. And that means even more people are unemployed, and you have even greater deflationary spiral because there's even less people with money out there. And so the government has to be very careful. Yes, on the whole, in normal circumstances, I'd be happy that inflation is low. If I wasn't worried about some other things the government's doing, and the fact that it still, goes crazy on spending. The federal government, that is, Queensland local government, state government, has pissed off a lot of people by cutting right, left, and centre. And some of these cuts are smart things, like literacy award, a 250,000 literacy award. An author doesn't need an award from the state government telling them they're a good writer. Let the market tell them a good writer by people buying their books. They had a subsidy for Torres Strait Island airfares, so flying from Cairns to Torres Strait, instead of being $200, was $99. Well, great for the people who live in the Torres Strait, but why should I, living in Brisbane, subsidise them because they choose to live on a bunch of islands? Now, at the very top of Australia. Now, they get the benefits of that. They get, the ocean, the fishing, the lifestyle that goes with that. So why should I subsidise their airfare? So I'm glad that the Newman government's cut that out as well. So we have this two-paced economy, or multi-paced economy, where we have high food inflation because of the expansion of the currency, yet at the same time we have deflation as the debt bubble collapses, which creates a very nightmarish scenario. And for those who agree with me, say something in the comments. If you think I'm missing a key point, say so in the comments. Obviously, this is bigger than just political parties. This is a problem with economics and economic systems. So where do we go from here? Well, the Reserve Bank's probably not going to drop interest rates because they want to leave some ammo in the gun in case Europe and China does implode and they have to try something to stimulate Australia's economy. But the mood of the average Australian is such that most people are trying not to spend at the moment. They're trying to save, or at least pay down debt. There's a lot of debt to be paid down. There's still people with student loans and lots of other things. The government's dipping its hands ever deeper into our pockets with carbon taxes, mining taxes, and all sorts of other taxes. The other problem that this deflation is having is on state revenues, because state revenues get a lot of their revenues from the GST tax, goods and services tax. But I think it was the Democrats, in their wisdom, when they in the Senate agreed to the GST, stated that it couldn't be on the necessities of life. So, like, for example, a donut you'll pay GST on, but flour you won't. A milkshake you'll pay GST on, but on milk you won't. That sort of thing. So, although these basics are going up this 5%, because they're not covered by GST, the GST revenues aren't increasing. Instead, the GST revenue is coming off stuff like TVs, computers, things like that are dramatically falling to the states because, you know, they're part of this deflationary spiral. So state governments are finding their income stream from the federal government, the GST revenues, is shrinking. Now, really, if the government wanted to address that, they would put the GST revenue over everything, i.e. even basic foodstuffs, and that would better catch the total market instead of having this selective market. Now, personally, most people wouldn't like that, but I'm just saying to overcome that problem, that's what they should do if they want to give the states their fair share of revenue, which was the GST was invented to do. So that's why I've titled this video Australia's low inflation, good news, ? Because I do question whether it is a good thing or not. And you know, they've got to be careful not to have this deflationary spiral. And the government thinks, oh, well, we've taken all this money in the form of carbon tax and we've redistributed wealth. But when you take money from the most productive people in society and give it to the least productive people in society, or you try to redistribute wealth, you often penalise the most productive people in society who decide instead, why am I working so hard? Or why are we trying to work on a double income? When if my wife just stayed home, she'd get paid money by the government anyhow. And so they talk about the need for productivity, yet the government's shooting itself in the foot by, you know, penalising you for working hard. And so this too ends up defeating its purpose, because if you have enough people make that decision, government revenue actually goes down. So this is where Julia Gillard has failed abysmally and Wayne Swan has failed abysmally, because they keep punishing those who want to work hard when you should reward those who want to work hard, because they're the ones who are going to help grow your economy. These are the thoughts of Silver Bull Channel. Stack when you can. Matt Maloney points out in his book, even in a deflationary scenario, precious metals are good because they hold their value better than the fiat. That's Silver Bull Channel, out.